Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into this week's edition of my top waiver wire targets and streamable defenses for week 13 of this NFL season. It's Thanksgiving week. So that means we got two, depending on what size of your league and when your playoffs start, anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks to make that final playoff push. And before I dive into today's video, I do want to acknowledge this video is coming out a little later than I normally get my videos on Tuesdays posted. They came into my apartment and tore up my floor and put new flooring in. It took a lot longer than I was told. It actually carried into the night past work, so the night got all messed up. But with that being said, you guys are not worried about that. You probably want to hear my waiver wire targets and streamable defenses. So let's just dive into today's video. I might go through them pretty quick because I do want to get this up and posted for you guys as soon as possible. That being said, waiver wire targets, you guys should know the drill. These players, they do have to be available in at least 50% of the rosters on ESPN. So not only there's a good chance you could put a claim in for them tonight, but if you guys do miss out on the players you put claims in, there's a possibility these players could still be out there for you to pick up off the waivers once they all process. With that being said, my top quarterback out of the week, I've mentioned this guy multiple times throughout the year. He's definitely a streamable quarterback option when the matchup is right. But I still do like Sam Darnold if you're looking for a quarterback option this week. He's only rostered on 47.1% of the rosters. Against that Titans defense, he threw for 244 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. What you like about him is he's at least getting the yards, right? And the last 8 games that Darnold's played in 6 of those games, he's thrown for at least 240 passing yards. Now, on paper, he does have a tough matchup this weekend, going against his former team in the Vikings, who have allowed the 10th fewest points per game against the quarterback position. But this is a revenge game, and especially with how much struggling J.J. McCarthy is having, doesn't it make sense that Sam Darnold's probably going to come out and ball out against the Vikings, and that's just going to push that whole talking point about the Vikings moving on from Darnold last year. So I do think he's still a quality streaming option in week 13. My running back out of the week, it's going to be an unknown player from the Saints. I believe he is a rookie, if I remember that correctly. Devin Neal. He's only rostered on 1.9% of the rosters. Alvin Kamara, he has a knee injury. I'm expecting that he's not going to play this week, and it might be a lengthy absence. And with the Saints not really going anywhere, I don't think they're going to rush Alvin Kamara to be back on the field. So if you need some quality depth pieces, especially if you're an Alvin Kamara manager, I would be definitely trying to go pick up Devin Neal. This past weekend against the Falcons, he only had 18 yards on 7 rushes, but what you like is he's got some juice in their passing attack, and he plays for a team that's probably going to end up throwing the ball in a lot of the games, playing catch-up mode. This past weekend, he actually caught 5 balls for 53 yards on 7 targets. Now, he's gotten at least 7+ touches in the last 2 games, and he does draw a quality matchup where he can be a sneaky flex play this week because he's going against a Dolphins defense that are tied for the 9th most allowed points per game against the running back position. My wide receiver out of the week is a guy I've been really impressed as far as what he looks like so far in his return from that torn ACL last year. The Packers wide receiver Christian Watson. He's only on 48.7% of the rosters right now. This past weekend against the Vikings, he had 5 receptions for 49 yards on 7 targets. What you like is he's been very consistent, right? He's gotten at least 4 targets he's played 5 games since he came back this season. In all those games, he's gotten at least 4 targets, and he's finished with at least 45+ receiving yards. It feels like he's on the edge of having a blow-up game, and this might be the time it happens this week on Thanksgiving. It's the first game on Thursday. He's going against a Lions defense that have allowed the 5th most points per game against wide receivers this year. My tight end out of the week, I think I've had a multiple, maybe 3 weeks in a row at this point, but the rookie tight end for Chicago, he needs to be on more rosters. Colston Loveland, only on 35.1% of the rosters. This past weekend against the Steelers, he had 4 receptions for 49 yards on 5 targets. What you like, in his last 6 games, he's gotten at least 4 targets in those games, and in his last 3 games, he's gotten at least 40 receiving yards. Now, he plays the Eagles on that Black Friday game on Amazon. It's a tough matchup on paper. They have allowed the 2nd fewest points per game against the tight end position, but the fact that he's getting at least those consistent targets and he's having consistent production as of late, he's not a bad option for you to turn to at the tight end position. A repeat name from a couple weeks ago for me, my flex out of the week. I am going to go with that Jaguars wide receiver who's been very impressive over the last, month and a half, Parker Washington. He's only on 20.2% of the rosters right now. This past weekend against the Cardinals, he had 5 receptions for 71 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets. What you really like, he's gotten a role in this offense, like I mentioned last time when I brought him up. Over the last 5 games, he's gotten at least 7 targets in 4 of those games. And then in those 5 games, he's finished with at least 50 plus receiving yards in 3 of those 5 games. And he draws a great matchup on Sunday where he's facing a Titans defense that are tied for the 4th most allowed points per game against wide receivers this year. So yeah, those are my top waiver wire targets of week 13. Moving into my streamable defenses. As a reminder, these defenses, they do have to be available in at least 50% of the leagues for me to speak about them. I know there's some other defenses you can consider that don't qualify, like maybe like the Jaguars against the Titans. They are just over the 50% mark. But yeah, and then as I like to remind people, streaming defense is high risk, high reward. Sometimes you get that big ceiling play. Sometimes you get the floor play, which all you can ask for. And if you do roll the dice on a decent, bad to decent defense, it could fall. The floor can fall underneath you. So again, I like to remind people it's a high risk, high reward proposition when you stream defenses. That being said, my number one streaming defense I like this week is going to be the Chargers against the Raiders. The Chargers are only on 29.4% of the rosters. Raiders are arguably, you can argue that they're the worst team in the NFL. And then why you like this matchup, this is a home game for the Chargers. I know they're not a traditional home environment, but still it is a home game for them. And then it's mainly the offense they're playing. The Raiders have allowed the 2nd most sacks in the NFL, so that's where you can rack up points. Where you can get the potential is big ceiling play is they have the 5th most turnovers, so if you can get a turnover that turns into a touchdown, that's great. And then what gives them a high floor option is the Raiders are only scoring 15 points a game this season. That is tied for the fewest in the NFL. My number 2 streaming defense, I mentioned them. They didn't come through me a couple weeks ago. Last week they did come through for me because they just had a long stretch of streamable options, and this will wrap up their streaming options at least for this week. We'll have to see later into December, but definitely not next week. With that being said, I like the Falcons against the Jets. Falcons are only on 36.3% of the rosters right now, and this is mainly because you can rack up sacks, right? The Atlanta Falcons defense actually has the 3rd most sacks in the NFL, and then they're going to face a Jets offense who have allowed the 4th most sacks. So you're looking for James Pierce and Walker, their other rookie, to get after Tyrod Taylor and maybe get those sacks and ideally maybe force a turnover or 2. And then what gives us a floor play as well, the Jets are only scoring 19.9 points a game this season. That's tied for the 5th fewest in the NFL. My number 3 streaming defense, this is kind of a high risk, high reward just because the Dolphins defense has not been great at times, but they definitely have been playing better over the last month. So I do like the Dolphins against the Saints. Dolphins are only on 2.4% of the rosters right now. This is a home game for Miami, so you can factor that in. And then what I like is just basically the offense that they're playing can give you a high ceiling and a high floor because the Saints are tied for the 4th most turnovers in the NFL. So that's where you can get those points by forcing those turnovers and ideally maybe returning one for a touchdown. And then what gives them a floor play is the Saints are only scoring 15 points a game this year. That is tied for the fewest in the NFL. They're tied with the Raiders as far as just not scoring points this year. And then what I do like about if you want to roll the dice on the Dolphins streaming them this week is they play the Jets next week. So you can stream the Dolphins 2 weeks in a row. My number 4 streaming defense I like the 49ers against the Browns. The 49ers are only on 20.7% of the rosters. We saw they are coming off a very good performance against that Panthers offense last night. Not the greatest offense in the world, but I do think they're a better offense than what the Browns have. And again, I know Shadur Sanders is going to be a 2nd start. So again, rookie quarterbacks will make mistakes in their early starts in their career. So there's those potentials where Shadur will hold the ball too long. That can turn into sacks. Or he did throw an interception last week. Rookie quarterbacks are prone to those mistakes where you can get those points. And what can give you a high floor if you want to go with the 49ers this week is the Cleveland Browns are only scoring 16.9 points per game this year. That is the 3rd fewest in the NFL. And then to wrap it up, I do also like the Bucks against the Cardinals. The Bucks are only on 19.5% of the rosters right now. This is a home game for the Buccaneers, so I do like that. I also do like that the Cardinals have allowed the third most sacks in the NFL, so you like the chances like Vita Vea blowing up the pocket and allowing the guys like Diaby on the edge to get home and get sacks on Brissett, because Brissett's not that. I mean, he can run a little, but he's not super fast when he does try to get outside the pocket, so you like to maybe see if those can turn into sacks and where you can rack up the points. And then why I do like the Bucks as well is if you did want to roll the dice and stream the Bucks against the Cardinals this week, is this they play the Saints next week, so you have an option to stream that defense 2 weeks in a row. So again, I did kind of rush through that for you guys because again, like I mentioned, my video's coming out a lot later because of them having to rip out my floor and install a new flooring in my place. With that being said, if you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button. If you had not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. You can follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok at Cody Talks NFL. Other than that, guys, I'm gonna get off here so I can get this posted for you. You'll see me tomorrow at some point. It depends if I get off my day job early or not, as far as when you'll get my starts and sits, but I do plan on getting that out for you guys tomorrow at some point. Peace out.